Welcome to SU Football Weekly. It's the bye week here, as I am your host, Carl Schoening, along with head coach of your Southwestern Pirates football team, Joe Austin. And Coach Austin, we are again doing this remote, as we'll be doing all of the remotes. So even though nobody was allowed to come to the Sheridan, we do appreciate the Sheridan for hosting us for our first couple shows. Hopefully nobody just showed up thinking that they could show up for that. I know you're still at your house doing with the drop back that we had for the show. How are you doing?
Doing great. I think we spread the word that we're no longer at the Sheridan. Of course, we want to get back there as soon as we can, and I know they want to have us back. But yeah, we've still got the backdrop in the dining room. My wife's still putting up with that. So we're full speed ahead. And now I know we talked before the show, as we get used to doing this remotely, we're going to be able to add back in player interviews and kind of get to what we would consider to be a normal show, where I talk a little bit, we show some highlights, we interview some players. So hopefully we can get to some normal SU Football Weekly content for the rest of the season.
Oh, yeah. Can't wait for just the, things to get back to normal. In fact, SHN Sports part owner Mike Capps, who also does the Round Rock Express, got his second vaccination shot today. So, as this kind of becomes a little more normalized, hopefully that's just inching us close back to normal. So, flashing back to last week, it was a 52-7 defeat to probably the best team in the ASC, University of Mary Hardin Baylor. And, you said after the game that final score didn't necessarily show how close the game actually was. The fourth quarter, they just kind of were able to put up some more points on the board. But could you just give us your thoughts on that game now that you've had a few days to digest it?
Well, I still agree with that initial reaction, in that the final score I don't think was an accurate representation. It was 17-7 late in the first quarter, 24-7 till late in the third quarter. That's not a blowout. They ran the score up. We got tired. We had some defensive injuries and made some subs, and they just refused to sub out. And they try to put it on us late. It's something that they typically try to do when they play us. And hey, it's not their job to stop themselves, right? But certainly, if we were full speed and if we didn't have some defensive injuries and a late turnover, I think that the margin could have been a little bit different. One thing that I didn't mention on Saturday, having had a chance to reflect, is that I think our 11-day layoff hurt us more than I expected. We had that winter storm where we didn't do football for 11 days, and then we had to hurry and in 4 days prepare to play a team that's won 2 national championships. Now, they lost one for rules violations, but still they've won 2 national championship games, whether they get to keep them or not. So that 11 days off, it hurt us more than I was hoping that it would. There were some places where, we weren't in the game shape we wanted to be. We weren't as sharp as we'd like to be, but that's just one of the things that you have to deal with right now. But I do think that layoff hurt us more than I hoped it would going into the game.
Yeah, I remember, I've interviewed a million coaches at this point, and one of the Thanksgiving breaks, it can take that quickly for just a few days off to, take you out of shape. So I imagine just sort of that, entire situation of the snowstorm really threw a lot of people out of their physical regimens, if you will. I was really impressed, if you don't mind me just jumping right into some of the players that impressed me. Jules Williams kind of put himself on the map. I thought he really did an outstanding job at corner.
He did, and I'm glad you mentioned that. We lost Jackson Reese, our number one corner, early in the game, but we've developed a really good 3-man core at that cornerback position. So Jules Williams, Eli Norris, I think, are both doing a great job. And Jules had to really step in and take a big role. And of course, he got an interception, made some good plays. He also did really well on special teams, made just a great open field tackle on the punt return. So it was good to see. He is so improved from last year. Really proud to see the progress that he's made. More on defense. The players elected Ben Brockman as the player of the game. He had a fumble recovery, was our leading tackler. Noah Clarkson had a strip sack, which led to a touchdown on our very next play. And I think if you ask our coaches, they would say that Noah's been our best and most productive defensive lineman through the first couple games. What hurt us defensively was we struggled on third down. We thought we'd do a better job getting off the field than we did, and we really hope to do a better job against a quarterback run game. And in particular, we let them have a 60-yard quarterback scramble on a 3rd and 18. It was those type of plays that we didn't make that gave them opportunities to score. But we got off the field a lot. And our goal for the game, our strategy for pulling an upset was to make them go the length of the field. So if you look at the beginning of the game, they had to go a long field in the first quarter, only got 3 points. They had to go a long field to start the third quarter, didn't score at all. So when we were able to put our defense in a good position, overall we did okay. There's things we could have done better. But as you said, some guys stepped up and some guys played really well in this game.
Yeah, and also it's just sort of one of those football situations where I think you guys had a couple explosive plays that half a second difference probably would have meant 6 points. And that's I know one time Ethan Powell just had to go between his fingertips, and then he was 2 strides away from getting into the end zone if he completes the catch. And mentioning Ethan Powell on that 57-yard pass from Gilpin to Castilleja, he took out 3 guys on 1 block. So you had a lot of positives to build on on that offensive side of the ball, despite only putting up 7 points. And I mentioned it, they kind of looked a little bit to me, I know this is before my time, a bit like the Purple People Eaters from Minnesota, just because they have that purple and yellow, and they're a tough defense.
They are a tough defense, and for whatever reason, they change their defense against us every year. They don't do it against anyone else. Of course, we're a little bit less conventional than most teams offensively, and we change game to game and year to year more than most teams do offensively. But their defensive team speed was amazing. They're really good. So 8, 10, 12 play drives don't happen against that team. Our strategy was try to get ourselves, get some first downs, get some momentum, and then try to create some chunk plays. We had an opportunity for 4 touchdowns. You mentioned the Ethan Powell play that was that close. We had another one to Gianni Taisakwi down the middle that we're real close on. And then, the fourth one's I'm forgetting at the moment, but we were behind them. In addition to Austin Castilleja's score, 3 other times we had a chance for quick scores. And that's what you have to be able to do against them. I thought Landry Gilpin did a really good job of extending plays. And I thought once we kind of got a handle on what they were doing defensively, I thought our offensive line did a pretty darn good job in pass protection. They're so tough to run the ball against. We had a lot of times where we were backed up. One of the things we didn't do a great job was fielding punts. And so our punt return group has some work to do. We gave ourselves some really long fields and backed up where we need to kind of get some first downs and get out of the shadow of your own goalpost. And we didn't do a great job doing that. It was tough sledding in the run game. But as you said, we had some opportunities to hit them on some big pass plays. We only went 1 for 4. And to pull an upset, you kind of got to go 4 for 4 in those situations. But we're that close, and the season's not done. So hopefully that close turns into more big play production as we go through the rest of the season.
You mentioned the special team game. Will Herbst continues to be a pretty good punter for you guys, and I know that you mentioned on SU Football Weekly last week that their special teams is sort of an extension of their offense. Could you talk about the job Will did?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So speaking of players of the game, I mentioned that the players elected Ben Brockman as defensive player of the game. They elected Austin Castilleja as the offensive player of the game. And then for the second straight game on special teams, they selected Will Herbst. And Will's filling a lot of roles for us. He's our field goal PAT guy, our kickoff guy, and our punter. And he's doing really well at all 3. We had 2 different styles of kickoffs. We kicked it deep. We kicked kind of an across field shorter kick to mix up who would have them catching, and he executed them really well. We did make a mistake in our punt protection in a one-on-one situation. One of their guys beat one of our guys, and they blocked a punt. But Will picked it up and ran for a 17-yard first down and just erased that mistake. And wouldn't you know it, one of our 4 chances to score where we got behind their whole defense came just a couple plays later. We didn't get it, but, Will put us in a position to score there. So he's done really well. And again, Will's taken on all these roles. He wasn't our punter last year, but he was our field goal kicker. He works so hard on the mental side of the game, so when he gets his opportunity, it's not like he's looking at the short putt in the 18th of the Masters where I hope it goes in. He's going out there thinking, it's my turn. I get to kick. I get to punt. he's in a great frame of mind to go out and execute, and he's doing really well.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the fun side of football sometimes. I know punting usually isn't something that you look forward to as a fan, because if you're a Pirates fan, you obviously don't want to see the punter, but Will really does do a good job, or has done a good job this season stepping into that role, and it's been fun. And you will get to see that kind of pick up from the punt if you're watching at home for the first down in the highlight reel that we'll be showing here momentarily. But Coach, as we kind of close that chapter and move on to the bye week in our next segment, just any final thoughts that you can kind of take away from that game against the Crusaders?
Well, yeah, sure. One more thing about our special teams. Beyond just Will Herbst, both our coverage units, our kickoff coverage unit and our punt coverage unit, did great. Two of their biggest weapons, they're probably their most explosive things that they do, is they're really good on kickoff return and they're really good on punt return. And they had -9 yards of punt return. I don't think anyone's ever done that to them before. At least I've never seen a stat page from one of their games where they had -9 yards in the punt return game. So we'll hit them in some good spots. And then our coverage guys also did really well. So, you might say I'm trying to sugarcoat a game that ended up being lopsided. I just don't think the game was as lopsided as it turned out to be. We got worn out a little bit on defense. We had to make some substitutions. Our 11-day layoff sure didn't help us from a cardio standpoint. We did a lot of great things. We were really close to being right in that football game and making them sweat a little bit in the second half, and that would have been fun.
Yeah, and part of that negative special teams loss was Jules Williams getting a nice open field tackle. That's also part of our highlight package. So, we'll go ahead and without further ado stop teasing that package. Take a break here on SU Football Weekly with Joe Austin. Show you the highlights from last week against the University of Mary Hardin Baylor, and come back and talk about the bye week here on SHN Sports. Play action, the pass deep down on the go route is intercepted.
Great job of turning around and staying in position and concentrating on that catch. That's Jules Williams, the 5'9", 155-pound junior out of South Grand Prairie High School.
As Bowden takes a low snap, and he'll drop back for a pass over to his left side. He loses the ball. It's a fumble, and it's recovered by the Pirates.
Coming out of the pile, number 5 with the football, that's the senior linebacker, Ben Brockman.
Gilpin on the play action will have time to throw. Gets across the middle, caught by Cossier at the 45 in Crusader territory. Gets a good block down the right sideline. He tiptoes it, stays on across the 10, 5, end zone, touchdown, Pirates.
What a play! Great effort by Costiella. He came across, he made separation on his defender, made a great catch, and then he picked up a block here on the right sideline.
Herbst has this one blocked. It'll bounce around. Herbst gets it again, and he'll try and tuck it and run across the 30
Picks
to
up
the
the first
40.
down.
He gets the 45 and out of bounds at the 50. Hey, a blessing in disguise.
That's right
there.
What an athletic play by your punter, Will Herbst. Great job.
Those were the highlights from last week's game against University of Mary Hardin-Baylor. I'm your host, Carl Schoening, joined by head coach of the SU Pirates football team, Joe Austin. And, Coach, this is the bye week now as we enter the second segment to talk about what would be the upcoming game. But in this particular case, we have a just no game on the schedule for the varsity. But, it is always kind of fun, these bye weeks, to be an evaluation. And you guys had a JV game Monday against UMHB. How did that go?
We had a lot of good performances. We didn't win the game, but our squad was a lot smaller than theirs. In fact, we only had 2 wide receivers going into the game, so we were limited schematically in what we could do. But we had a lot of guys that really showed their development really well. So it was fun to get to see that game, fun to get to watch those guys get to play. And again, there were some really good individual performances, which is great to see.
Yeah, and that's always kind of good. I wrote down a name because Uom Okan, the running back, right? He had a pretty solid game, and that's something that I see a lot at this level is you guys just kind of have a really open opportunity for the running back game. So always good to develop those kind of skill players down there. And just if you don't mind me talking about it a little bit longer, your JV program, that's not something overly typical, is it?
Most teams in our conference will play junior varsity, not all of them. This year, it's been difficult for us to find JV opponents. In fact, we were hoping to play 2 games with UMHB. They canceled our second one. Typically, we play 2 games with Texas Lutheran, and they're not fielding a JV team. So it's been hard this year for us to find JV opponents. So this as of now, if the phone rings, we would be open to taking another one. But as of now, that's going to be the only JV game that we're going to be able to get. Typically, we like to do 4 or 5 so that all of our players are getting to go through a full battery of games, whether it's they're dressing for the 5 home games and the 5 JV games or a combination of different things that may happen. So, it's a little disappointing we're not able to have more JV opportunities, but it's part of the situation this year.
So kind of shifting back to the varsity, a bye week is an interesting time. I'm always curious, based off of a coach's philosophy, is it an opportunity for you to really kind of turn up the intensity since you don't have a game, or maybe take it slow since it'll be recovery? And then maybe does the winter kind of change how you were preparing for this bye week, because all of a sudden you're going up against a team that you already had a week to prepare for? So it's kind of different as, your next opponent is now Louisiana College instead of what it was going to be for the ASC playoff.
Sure. So I think that's a 2-part answer. One is what's the right thing for our team to do preparation-wise, and 2 is, what's going on with Louisiana College. So again, with that 11-day layoff, we're trying to get back into shape. We're trying to get back, our timing. We need to practice. So we are taking 2 days off this week. Typically, we probably do 3 days off in a normal bye week. But we need to get some work in. And so we're not going to be overly physical. In fact, on Monday and Tuesday, we were just helmets only. We're going to go out in shoulder pads and helmets Thursday and Friday. So we're not going to put the full gear on. So it's a lot of mental, it's a lot of timing, it's a lot of fitting and repping things. That's what we need to do as a football team. As we talked about evaluating our UMHB game, that 11 days off hurt us. We've got some work to do. As far as how Louisiana College factors into this, we had a week to prepare for them, but no film. So we were just guessing off of last year. And of course, they have a new head coach, new special teams coordinator, and they've changed quite a bit. So it's good that we're going to have some film on them going in, because it is going to change what our plans are. And it gives us some extra time to implement those plans and to really get to know them. They played their first game last week. They're going to play their second game this week. And I know next week, I don't want to give too much away. I'm sure we'll talk about how their season's going and how we stack up against them. So we have 1 game worth of data. We'll get another game on Sunday. And that'll kind of put us on even footing. We'll both have played 2 games going in, but I think it's going to be a benefit overall that this game got pushed back, because if we'd gone to Pineville, we'd have been making a lot of in-game adjustments, because they're very different than what we were guessing. And again, we're guessing off of last year, and this year's team is schematically different than what they were.
Yeah, I guess that is sort of the blessing in disguise. Obviously, we're very happy if you're just kind of joining the program, if you will. The two games, the Belhaven game and the Louisiana College game, both rescheduled, so you do get that full 4-game schedule in with those two sort of being your final two instead of your middle two. And, you also can maybe use this bye week, and I'm curious to even look further ahead towards to Belhaven. Is that something on your mind, or do you take it one game at a time?
We're totally one game at a time. Now, the coaches, of course, put together a preliminary plan against Belhaven, because if you remember, we had LC canceled, thought we'd go play Belhaven, and then Tuesday of that week that got canceled. So the coaches have looked at Belhaven. There's a chance that the players looked for a couple of days at Belhaven, but at this point, with the 11 days off, we're thinking a lot about ourselves, getting better at what we do, and then all the concentration is on getting ready for Louisiana College. So it's 2 weeks of work on Louisiana College, and then the typical 1 week of preparation for Belhaven.
Well, that's kind of your work cut out for you in that particular case, but when you do talk about maybe preparing for these new teams, you obviously have some new wrinkles that you're not going to share with us on the show, but what do you maybe do as a coach to sort of find some inspiration for those wrinkles? Because, I've been following you guys for a while now, and I always am a little surprised by 2 or 3 plays a game where it just kind of seems that you have something original, or if it's not original, you pulled it from something that you found somewhere, because I've been told that coaches don't really make up anything original. Everybody's done everything at this point in football. But, where do you kind of come up with something that you introduce new to the team that the other opponents don't have on film, if you will?
Well, if you look at it from an offensive perspective, this is my 22nd year of coaching offense. Coach Ross has been coaching for 35 years. So we've done a few different things throughout the years. The great thing is I'm not our offense coordinator anymore. I'm not a quarterback coach. And I think in some ways that's allowed me being stepped back away from it to say, hey, I did this about 8 years ago, or I did this 15 years ago against a similar type of defense. Let's maybe look at doing that. Coach Nick Mask, who's coaching our quarterbacks now, has also come up with some really good plays. Our double reverse pass against ETBU started with Nick's idea, and then Tom and I helped him refine it, and it turned into a great play. And of course, it scored a touchdown. So when we get together and look at game plans offensively, we follow brainstorming rules where nothing's a bad idea. We've got our things that we like to do that are our core things that we think fit our team, but we're certainly open to having some wrinkles and doing some things and taking some shots. And I'm glad that Coach Ross and I'm glad that Coach Mask continue to have some creative things every week, because it's fun, but they work a lot. We've had some success for some of our long-term fans. We've done a lot of things like what we scored on in the ETBU game. That's not a one-off for us. We do some of those things a lot. So I appreciate that you notice a couple times a game, we're trying to get the creativity going and do some things that are fun for the players, fun to practice. But as I said, they also, develop into some good plays. And defensively, it's maybe not as noticeable, but Coach Kriesel does a really good job of putting a spin every week on how we utilize our personnel. Right now, our starters are pretty well ingrained, but they're not always necessarily in the exact same place they were the week before. Ben Brockman, for example, is super versatile. And in our 2 games, he's lined up in several different positions at different times. We played with 2 high safety looks. He played with 1 high safety looks. We've played a 3-man front. We played a 4-man front. We've had several different blitz looks, all within the techniques of what our players know, and then within the techniques that we teach our players. So it's fairly routine for them. We can put different spins on things from week to week.
You mentioned it. I love me some defense. I actually learned a lot about defense when I was Craig Way's spotter for University of Texas games. And when you're a spotter, your job is mainly to point out the tackler. So all of a sudden, I'm pretty much just exclusively watching the defense and kind of out of the corner of the eye, seeing where the ball's going, so I can point out who made what play and all of that. And I always joke, everybody's an offensive coordinator, but that defensive side of the ball is really more or less to the casual fan an entire mystery, because it is very structured on that side of the ball. kind of a fun football question because I love talking football with you. What is maybe something the casual fan doesn't know about the defensive side of the ball that will just in a few minutes or short here, that will really open their eyes if they wanted to start watching the defensive side of the ball during the game?
Well, there's always 8 gaps. Those are the spaces between the offensive linemen and the tight ends, and then on the edges. There's always 8 gaps, and every defense, no matter how you line up, someone is responsible for all 8 of those gaps. And you can move people to them. They can be lined up right in front of them. But there's always 8 gaps, potential gaps, and there's always someone assigned to all 8 gaps, which makes it seem pretty simple, right? It's just how you align your players based on what their strengths are and what your philosophy is as a defense, which is why we're able to play 2 high safeties or 1 high safety and move Ben Brockman around, play with 3 down linemen, play with 4 down linemen, because for us, our techniques are the same. It's just who has those 8 gaps. And really, a lot of times it doesn't change a whole lot. So we can look really multiple without making it all that complicated for our players.
That makes sense, and that's kind of something that can kind of open up a fan's vision as well as broadcasters like my own to kind of see what gap. Because I always like to maybe in my broadcast throw in the A gap or the B gap or around the left or right end. But obviously, like you say, there's 8 and. I think we mentioned it last week. Only one player needs to, make a play in one of those gaps, and all of a sudden the play goes that momentum way, one way or the other, based off what that one player did. So, always kind of fun to talk about that. Well, Coach, coming up on the end of the show, any final thoughts? Maybe something that I didn't get to here in the bye week episode of SU Football Weekly.
No, I mean, I think it's great. We got to talk about JV. At the risk of leaving some folks out, I think Joe Nielsen at defensive tackle had a really standout performance. Our coaches liked what he did, and he's a guy that's traveling with our varsities right on the edge of kind of making that jump. You mentioned Uamokan, one of our running backs. Gianni Tysekwe got his start, his first varsity action. We've got a really great group of freshman running backs that I hope are battling each other for a lot of years into the future. Colby Cashin, Zach Vilo, Clayton Cracy. So a really good group of running backs that are supporting each other, but they're fighting it out. So I guess this is my opportunity to give a shout out to the freshman running back group. In other weeks, maybe it'll be, another group I get to give mention to. But it was great to see the JV game. And as I said, I wish we got to have more opportunities to do that. And next year, I have no doubt that we'll get back on the regular rotation where we're doing a 4 or 5 game schedule so that all of our players are getting lots of chances to play and develop within our program.
Well, one of the many things that I do, because I do a lot of things, is Austin Spurs for the San Antonio Spurs. And they've really placed a big emphasis on their development program, as you guys have as well. And I just think that's the right play because obviously, players only get better by playing. And, it's always good to promote those JV guys because they work just as hard as everybody else. And it's always, fun to hear about them because I think maybe it's a little less covered, but always just as important to communicate that. Well, Coach, thank you so much for your time. Glad that we were able to catch you without a practice this week, and we will definitely see you next week on SU Football Weekly, same time, 6 o'clock Wednesday. And I am Carl Schoening. Coach,